Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Browns wrapped up mandatory minicamp out in Berea. Two things were the big stories of the Browns' mandatory minicamps. Number one, Deshaun Watson threw in 7-on-7s for the first time. Didn't do that during OTAs. Did do it during mandatory minicamp. Didn't do the 11-on-11 yet, but there is progression there. The other thing, Amari Cooper, not at mandatory minicamp. The thought is he wants a new contract. Heading into the final year of his deal, scheduled to make a little over $20 million. High end of the wide receiver market is now at $35 million. Tony Rizzo, Aaron Goldhammer from ESPN Cleveland, talking about that Cooper contract situation.
What does Amari want? We're going to have to find this out.
I think he doesn't want to enter the last year of his contract and not have any protection for next year. I think that is the bigger issue than the amount of money. The other question is that I have is, why didn't this get done before now? I mean,
it's the obvious. Trust your eyes. They're far apart. They have to be. If they were close, Andrew Berry, GM, would just do it and get it done. They're far apart. But what are the Browns without him this year?
And let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. That last little bit, it's tough to answer. The Browns need Amari Cooper in that wide receiving core.
Yeah, as much as I feel good about the upside of this room, it's based on the consistency he gives you. That allows you to take chances on projections on players and feel good about their upside because you have that constant in Amari Cooper. If you take Amari Cooper out of this wide receiver room, all of a sudden those question marks get a little bigger, So, but I agree with Riz. Like I do think that, they're. What's your definition of close? Are they going to get this done during minicamp? No. So you start to think of what does this mean for July? I think that's where my mind immediately goes, and if they're still not in agreement by July, then alarm bells need to start going off. This is, mini camp's one thing, but if he's not inked by, training camp, we get to the Greenbrier, then I think you have a major issue on your hands.
All right, so let's hold on to that thought relative to Amari Cooper, because I'm going to tie this back together. Another player who is entering final year of his contract that the Browns would like to extend is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, really good linebacker. Remember, second-round pick, so there's no fifth-year option. This is the final year of his deal. Owusu-Koramoah was asked, is he thinking at all about a contract extension?
My agents really handle those things. If they are negotiating, they'll contact me and they'll give me certain prices and things like that. And hey, look, what are you looking for? But I don't give much thought to it. It's really about ball.
Is that easy to kind of put out of your mind, or is it a process where you have to remind yourself, hey, don't worry about this, I can't control it type of thing?
Well, it's about compartmentalization. There's a time for it, and then there's a time to focus on football. There's different, you may go home and maybe 6 o'clock at night, you're done studying, and then, okay, you may give some time to it. But there's always a time and a place for everything.
In case you know enough how this front office operates, there's a sequence to the way you do the contracts because it has implications relative to the salary cap this year and who you have to renegotiate to create cap space for. So it may be a matter of they got to get JOK's contract done before they can deal with the restructurings, before they can do Amari Cooper's contract. I kind of believe they're going to find a way to get it done, but I think there's a number of dominoes and there's chess pieces that have to be moved around the board by the front office.
Yeah, you laid it out great. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here, right? And we've seen precedent. If you look at last year with Grant Delpit, similar situation to JOK, second-year pick, going in the final year of your deal. They understand what these players' projections are, and they want to get it done as early as possible, but sometimes there's a lot of hurdles in the way first. Delpit was an in-season extension. Is that something we're going to see with JOK? And also, we know they really haven't coveted the linebacker position as a whole, but JOK is a difference maker. So he's got to be a priority. But there's going to be a way they go about this to where it may seem like it's dragging out, but it's probably just the natural timeline that they view with all their second-round picks. And we'll get to revisit this again next year with Martin Emerson.
Yeah, and again, that's where it's great that you got him in the second round. You were able to trade up. The one downside is, as a second-round pick, you got to pay him a year quicker when they turn into really good play. And he's a really good player. just a gut feeling. Do you think, I got to believe they find a way, this front office is really good at it. They find a way to structure a contract that satisfies Cooper enough, that keeps him in the fold. Andrew Berry said as much, and they had a pretty good idea this wide receiver market was going to blow up. I don't know if it's blown up more than they thought it would.
Yeah, I think that has a little something to do with it, because you heard rumblings about this back at the combine, that he was the guy they were looking to extend and kind of get ahead of it. Well, the market got on top of you. Now those the money getting thrown around's a little more significant than they were probably planning on. But you're talking about someone who produces. This is someone who is in their prime. The difference is, if you look at JOK, someone coming into their prime, you're not worried about the years, because you're going to have it for the breadth of his prime. Someone like Amari Cooper, while they're in their prime, they're closer to the end than they are at the beginning. So you're going to be hesitant to throw 3-4 years around. You're probably looking at maybe a 3-year extension with an out after year 2, which is probably the sticking point with Amari's camp, where they want that long-term security. And the bottom line is, we don't know what the player's thinking. If Amari Cooper's thinking, hey, I want to play for another 5 seasons, well, the reality of the situation is, then those last 3 probably aren't going to be in Cleveland.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is, the front office has been really good about finding a way. Okay, we'll give you a little bit more guaranteed, a little bit more signing bonus. There are ways to incentivize it, and I can only go by what Andrew Berry and the front office has done. They've been pretty good at finding ways to get those things done. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, again, during that media availability, asked how this defense can improve in year 2 under Jim Schwartz.
It's about finding the mistakes that we had, finding the things that we didn't do as well as we wanted to, and correcting those mistakes. It doesn't have to be complicated. We don't have to go to the moon, find another planet, right? I think the simplest thing is to find the things that we did wrong and correct those things.
Is that kind of nice to be able to build on that success you had? Obviously there hasn't always been that kind of stability here, but just sort of to build on what you've had.
Yeah. The good thing about when a team has success, or whether it's little or a lot, there's a culture that's built. And when the culture is built, then there's a system that people can step right into, right, and continue to do the same things, find the things that will elevate and what they can use to build on that same culture that has already been there. So I think for us, it's good to see that, we still have the same culture, the same attitude, the same principles, right, and we could just go right in and foot forward.
What kind of taste has that Houston game left?
Not a good one. Not a good one. I mean, obviously we lost. So, anytime that is not a W or a win, then it's no bueno.
And Casey, I love the answer. It's not rocket science. We know what we didn't do well. We got to go fix it.
Yeah, and it's in year 1 of a system to know that they achieved what they did achieve. Well, now that's the baseline. That's the jumping off point. Now it's about building. Now it's about building on top of the system that you've already been in for a year. This is where continuity comes into play, and not just the players, it's the coaches. And it's not just your star players, it's the depth players. So everyone's already bought in. Now it's about just taking that next step, and knowing that there's always things you can improve on. Obviously they were a markedly better defense at home than they were on the road. So now it's about tackling that and making that travel, weaponizing the defense on the road, because they already have the pieces in place. Their ceiling can be as high as they want it to be.
So there's a school of thought that the Browns brought back pretty much everybody. I know Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki left. There's a school of thought that, you bring back some guys and you add to it and you get better that way. There's another school of thought that, if you bring back everybody, how the pieces fit. What are your thoughts just relative to that?
Well, especially since it's year 2. Like sometimes you can have too many players that have been in a certain system for too long and messages start echoing hollow. But these guys are all hungry. They're all entering their prime together. Like just the age of the players as a whole, the nucleus of this team. Like I think it's a perfect recipe to bring everyone back. And then if you look at what they did lose, you lose Anthony Walker. Well, he's a tremendous leader. I do think they have an upgrade in Hicks and what Hicks can give you on the field, but how does that work off the field? How does that work in the locker room? Missing that voice. This is going to have to come together, and training camps where you build on that, especially a trip to the Greenbrier where these guys really get to acclimate with each other and they'll get to know Hicks and his leadership style. And it's just, you got to figure out the perfect recipe, So I do think losing Taki is going to hurt. He's a very physical presence. Can Bookie Watson be that guy? Is yet to be seen. So they're a little bit unknown. But when you bring back, 10 of 11 starters on a defense who's ascending, and just think about it, because at every level they have star players. They have elite players at every level, whether it's the defensive line, the edge room, you look at Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle, you go to the cornerback room, there's elite players there. You got Delpit coming back off injury. I think you like the recipe of what they have, but it's all about just letting it kind of evolve now because they already have the jumping off point.
All right, so the question is, ceiling and floor for the Browns defense next year, just in your eyes.
Dave, the ceiling? It's top defense in the league. I think the talent dictates that. I think you have the talent to go out there and be the tip of the spear defense in the NFL. They gave up the fewest yards in the NFL by 333 yards. You just look at the things they can improve on. They were the most penalized defense with 118 penalties for 923 yards. You need to improve that. I think they need to improve their red zone scoring defense. A lot of it, you got to understand the Browns also turned the ball over more than any team in the league. So they were put in a lot of disadvantageous situations. But you got to still, if you're an elite defense, you got to carry that mentality. If you get on a short field, you still got to give up nothing. 3 points can be too much sometimes. So they have to take that mentality that they are elite at every level. Because between the 20s, they were very hard to move the ball against, but sometimes they found themselves short field. They'd give up an easy touchdown. Tighten those things up, just a little thing here, a little thing there. Give up 3 less points on the road, just 3 less points. And all of a sudden you're in a different echelon of defense. So the ceiling, top defense in the league. Floor, probably somewhere around 12 to 15.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Case Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We flip sides of the ball. We'll talk offense straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcasts. Chris Sims, Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk on what Ken Dorsey can bring to the Browns offense that has been missing the last couple of years with Deshaun Watson.
Dorsey has experience showcasing star quarterbacks. The Browns have supposedly a star quarterback who had better play like one sooner rather than later. And if the goal is let's get the most out of our quarterback, it's not system driven. This is what our guy can do. We need to have plays, circumstances, decisions, progressions, everything that lets him be a star. And maybe that's part of getting the most out of Deshaun Watson, not treating him like another piece of the offensive puzzle, but saying we need to run the offense through him. It's
right.
The Russell Wilson thing. He wanted to have the offense run through him. He didn't want to be part of a system. Maybe Stefanski's just been conditioned. And I'm spitballing here, but I hadn't really thought of this.
I'm spitballing with you.
And Dorsey's like, no, it's
right.
star.
Right. No, I think more like what you're saying is a little bit more of curtailing it towards the player rather than the player curtailing to the offense and me making it work that way a little bit. We talk about that a lot. I think there could be some value in that there too. And I think with what Ken Dorsey's offense, what I would envision and what we've seen in Buffalo, right? Throwing the ball down the field a little bit more, going back to the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton, that's what they do. I don't necessarily think Deshaun Watson's at his best when he is too West Coasty, right? He didn't run a West Coast offense with Bill O'Brien and them in Houston.
And Casey, that Mike Florio in that beginning part of that said what I've been trying to say probably better than I've said it. This offense needs to kind of revolve around Deshaun Watson. That's what you brought him here for. That's why you gave up what you gave up and you paid him what he did. I don't know if they were trying to do that before.
Yeah, and it was a good point by Sims as well. The Stefanski's ran a system, and he's had to do it with quarterbacks that you wouldn't consider highly athletic or the premier talent. I think the closest you could probably get was Kirk Cousins. Up until this point. So there's a different philosophy when you're trying to build around your quarterback. And I do think if you just think to Dorsey's history as a quarterback coach, two divergent styles in Cam Newton and Josh Allen, but the goal was the same in the end, to maximize their talents. And their offenses looked wildly different from what they were in Carolina to what he was doing in Buffalo. So it is about trying to get the most out of your quarterback, maximize the talent available. And while both Cam Newton and Josh Allen were phenomenal talents, they did it in different ways. With Cam, it was utilize his legs, threaten the defense as many times as you can to get everybody to suck up, and then you can hit the long ball. With Josh Allen, it's almost like trying to break a wild horse. He wants to go. You got to kind of pull him back and let him take those deep shots. So it's about finding the sweet spot and trying to communicate with your quarterback to figure out, how do we get this thing to spark? How do we get the most out of you to be explosive, to give you concepts that you're comfortable with and that you feel that you could attack a defense. We really didn't get to see that last year. Last year, it felt like there was a lot of hesitancy. So how do we get you playing free, out of your own mind, and just making plays? So I think that Dorsey's experience with quarterbacks is going to pay off greatly this year.
So what do you expect to see? We keep hearing that this is going to look a lot like the offense in, the beat reporters, Mary Kay, and that has said it's going to look a lot like what they did in Houston with Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien. What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to keep harping on it, man. That this team just needs to get motion, windrow dressing, sideline to sideline. But I think they need to be really divergent with the types of alignments, creating bunch scenarios with their wide receivers to get free releases for players like Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. We already know what Cooper's capable of. So kind of give him that DeAndre Hopkins role where you're a two-way go player at all times. Check with me at the line. Don't be dogmatic into timing-based stuff. Sometimes you got to rely on players to make plays. And when you got someone like Cooper, you need to lean on that and then not just be, this is, no matter what, you're running a curl here. Sometimes you got to kind of go off script. And that's something Deshaun has excelled at in his career, and it's not, obviously the best plan isn't for the play to break down. But when the play does break down, you have a player who can kind of go into his bag and make things happen. So kind of allow room for that in your offense.
Yeah, and the other thing that when I think of Deshaun Watson in Houston, processed things really quickly. He saw mismatches and boom, ball was in. So allow him to do that.
Yeah, and you heard him talk about it, in years past, he had always set the protection at the line. But when he got to Cleveland, that wasn't the scheme. So if that's what he needs to do to get involved, to get to where he feels like he's dictating, let him come to the line, let him assess the protections, and just allow him to get in that mind frame to where he's dictating.
Yeah, so the other thing is, how big a deal are the choice routes relative to what Watson does well? We keep hearing that's going to be a part of this.
Yeah, and that's a good question because we keep leaning on what does that mean for the receivers. For someone like Cooper or more even David Bell, I think that's a good thing. For someone like Cedric Tillman, maybe not so much. But none of that matters if it doesn't work with Watson. So, and I think that this kind of leans to his off-script type mentality. So I think it could be favorable, but he hasn't been in such a heavy, choice route system. And choice routes, they're in every offense. It's a buzzword right now, but they're just baked in coverage beaters. So I think that it could lend favorably for someone of the mentality of Watson who's looking to make the most out of a play, to make a good play, a great play. And you can do that through choice routes if the receiver and the quarterback are on the same page. And it comes down to their ability to process defenses. Now, defenses can also throw a monkey wrench and be able to hide coverage and disguise things and make it look like something when it's really something else. So it just comes down to time on task. And that's where these reps right now are valuable. That's why when they get in the training camp and when they get to go against other ones, when they have these inter squads against like Minnesota later, I think that's where you kind of build on that and you find out what this could become.
So the other thing that keep going back to, and Lance Reisland and I say this all the time, the Browns offense doesn't get easy yards that other offenses get. Is that kind of what you're getting at with coverage beaters and those kind of things?
Yeah, turning things into long handoffs, and it's providing answers. It's providing answers to questions. When you come to the line and they're aligned in a certain way, if they're in tight, when you're used to seeing this specific coverage, like a off man, how do you take advantage of that? Is there a system in place for cover three when you get specific looks? So that's what it comes down to for me, is being over prepared in certain scenarios and under prepared in others. And we didn't see them really find answers. And that's where you get those easy yards, those coming to the line in a bunch formation, getting a free release for Judy, and having a 6-yard handoff in essence that he can, take for 12 yards because he's good with the ball in his hands. Finding scenarios where you can take advantage of that. Can this offense do that?
Yeah, and you know what? If they can, it should be a really, really good year for the Browns and Deshaun Watson, without question. Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians. Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians, one of the best records not only in the American League, but all of baseball. Somewhat a surprise. The question is, are the Guardians serious World Series contenders? Here's Aaron Goldhammer from ESPN Cleveland on that topic.
The way that I look at this is if you win the division, okay, and you have a bye through the wild card, you're a World Series contender. Chris, the key is get in, and then if you avoid that wild card series, that's a big deal. And right now, they're on track to not only do that, but do that pretty comfortably. I think if you're a division champion and you avoid the wild card, there are only 4 teams in all of baseball that do that. At some point, yeah, I think you are a World Series contender.
With that, let's welcome in Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Hoynesy, that would be one of the top 2 teams in the American League. Certainly possible. You look at it, and I talk me into the fact that they're World Series contenders. I mean, my thing is just enjoy it. They're playing well. Are they World Series contenders?
Yeah, Dave, I do not know. I think they're definitely a contender for the division title. I mean, and that's the key thing. Win the division, get into the postseason, and we've seen it so many times before. You win that, you get into postseason, anything can happen. Texas was a wild card last year, won their first World Series title since the move to Texas. So, you just got to get in. You just got to get to October. And right now, the Guardians are on their way. I mean, they're playing better than I think anyone anticipated. They have done just about everything right under rookie manager Stephen Vogt.
All right, so without question, that bullpen has been lights out. Here's reason for concern. This quality starts for Major League Baseball. This is the list. Quality starters go in 6 innings by a starting pitcher allowing 3 runs or less. Top team Mariners, they have 40 quality starts. Phillies have 37. Blue Jays have 32. Guardians are bottom 5. They only have 18, ahead of just the Athletics, White Sox, Brewers, and Marlins. Those are 3 of the worst teams in baseball, and the Brewers are right around 500. So, Hoynesy, bullpen has been lights out. My question, I guess, is, man, can they sustain it if you're asking them to go 4-5 innings every night?
Yeah, that's impossible, Dave. The bullpen cannot do that. The Guardians know that, and they know that their rotation is compromised. They lose Shane Bieber. Gavin Williams hasn't made a start this year. He was supposed to be a big part of that rotation. Ben Lively came back from Miami with some soreness. We still don't know the extent or the possibility of the injury, but I would think he's probably questionable for his next start. So that rotation is going to need some help. And the tough thing is that most of the young pitchers are in the rotation already. Guys like Logan Allen and Tanner Bybee. They are in there. They've already graduated to the big leagues, and the depth concerns are definitely concerns. You have Javion Curry is down in Columbus, but we've seen him a couple times. He's been struggling. Tyler Beatty, a veteran guy who's opened a year in the bullpen with Cleveland, is at Columbus. He's a starting option. Joey Cantillo had a great spring, a left-hander, but then he got hurt at the end of camp. He's just coming back. Gavin Williams is still on a rehab assignment. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So the question becomes, do they make a trade? Here are some guys that are tied to the Guardians as far as starting pitcher go. You have Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins and Kevin Gausman from the Blue Jays, both under team control for multiple years. I'll get into that in a minute. You got Severino, Minaya, Blackburn, Sears. Those are young guys, Tyler Anderson. So Luzardo is arbitration eligible the next 2 years. This year he's making $5.5 million. Gausman's $24 million this year, $23 million next year, $23 million in 26. I can't see that happening. Blackburn arbitration eligible next year. Sears is making $745,000 this year, and he's under team control and arbitration eligible for the next 4 years. So he's got that pre-arbitration year. I would think, Luzardo and the Athletics guys would make more sense just from a dollars and cents standpoint. The question becomes, when you have guys that are young and under team control, you gotta have the prospects. And as we've mentioned, the Guardians have had. There's a gap now between their prospects are down at high A and the like.
Yeah, for sure, Dave. And I think everyone would like young, controllable starting pitchers. And Luzardo is one of those guys. He's 26. J.P. Sears, another lefty that they've seen a bunch of times over the last 2 years with Oakland. He's 28. So those are the kind of guys you'd like to get if you're Cleveland. You can control them. You can keep them in the system, but they're going to cost. And Oakland is not a contender. Obviously, Miami's not a contender. They've got a team like Cleveland at over the barrel, so to speak. They can ask for what they want. They can ask a high demand. And if Cleveland is serious about needing a starter and staying in contention for the postseason, they've got to make a tough decision. I mean, if you're Oakland, if you're Miami, you're going to ask for a guy like Chase DeLauder, the outfielder who had such a big spring in big league camp with Cleveland. They're going to ask for your best guys, and the question is, do you do that?
Yeah, and again, they'll have to weigh that. Another thing that will factor in, and tomorrow on the show, we'll go through some of the top prospects in the draft. The Guardians have the number 1 overall pick, so that could replenish a guy like DeLauder. Those are the pros and cons that the front office is weighing if it is Chase DeLauder that somebody wants.
Yeah, for sure, and it's kind of an interesting time of the season for the front office, Dave, because right now under the old rules before the draft was moved to the All-Star game, the draft would be happening right now.
Right.
This would probably be right around when the draft would be taking place. But now with the draft at the All-Star break on July 14th, you've got the front offices kind of right now. They're just starting to really ramp up and concentrate on the draft. They're starting to zone in on that. Then the draft takes place. then there's a big, you got to switch gears and all of a sudden talk, trades and the dialogue starts again. All your, your trade conversations start again until August 1st, which is the deadline. So this is kind of a mad scramble right now. And, I don't know if things get lost in the translation, but, there's a lot of things going on with all 30 big league front offices right now.
All right, so we talked a little bit about some of the starting pitching. Another thing, you could certainly target some hitters. Here are the guys that have been kind of linked to the Guardians via trade from a number of different sources. Bo Bichette, shortstop for the Blue Jays. We'll get into that in a minute. Rafigo from the Angels is an intriguing one. Tommy Pham is on a one-year deal. Luis Robert, a younger guy, we'll get into his contract situation. Then there's Peterson, Rooker, Jerkson Profar for the Padres, Michael Conforto for the Giants. So Bichette is due $12.08 million this year. He's under contract next year at $17.5 million as free agent in 2026. Luis Robert is intriguing. $12.5 million this year, $15 million next. Club options for 26 and 27 at $20 million. Rooker's, again, the guys with the A's, $750,000 this year. 25, 26, and 27 are arbitration years. So you look at those guys. Bichette, I know a lot of high-profile writers have linked the Guardians to Bichette. That does not seem like a move this type of move this front office makes to me. It just doesn't seem the way that it goes. Robert, maybe. Rooker, more likely to me.
Yeah, Rooker. I like Rooker, a former number one pick of the Twins. The Guardians have seen a lot of him. Power hitter. He's with the A's now. He's having a decent season with them. I've liked him for a long time. Luis Robert Jr., great power, big year last year, but the guy can't stay healthy, Dave. And I really, I question that whole that unit in Chicago when they brought all those players together over the last few years. They haven't accomplished a whole lot, and I wonder what the problem is. So, I'd proceed with caution on that front.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, before I let you go, you wrote a little breakfast with the Guardians this past week, on pace to win 100 games. Let's talk a little bit about the job Stephen Vogt has done. I mean, it's hard to find any fault with the guy. It looks like they got another guy that can manage at the big league level.
Yeah, he's done a great job. If you're around him, you think he's been managing for 10 years. He's open with the players. I think, just being off the diamond as a player, retiring after 2 years ago, I think that's really helped him relate to this team. It's a young team. He's pushed all the right buttons so far, and he's so positive, Dave. You can tell he hasn't been beaten down by, 10, 15 big league seasons in the dugout. So, everything is good. Everybody's phenomenal. There's like 6 or 7 guys that are the heart and soul of the team. So, I think he's just what this ball club needed.
Paul Hoynes, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. I'm sure as that trade deadline creeps up, we'll touch base with you more regularly. Appreciate it, Paul.
Thanks, Dave.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. Great Guardians coverage. He is the Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. We're talking Donovan Mitchell extension with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers, going through the coaching search and waiting to see what Donovan Mitchell decides. Will he sign the extension that the Cavs are certainly getting ready to offer in a couple of weeks. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, what about it? Yeah, Mitchell is a guy that the Cavs certainly want. Do you get a sense? What's your sense with Mitchell and the extension that's going to be presented to him?
Yeah, I think as far as, the coaching search, well, as far as the extension, I think that, the Cavs feel pretty confident that he's going to sign that. The sense around the league, and other rival teams who would have a pretty good sense of what Donovan Mitchell plans to do, because, they may be floating things to his agent saying, if you don't sign that extension, we'd certainly try to make a trade for you. So, but I don't know that that's the case, but the sense I'm getting from opposing teams is that Mitchell is going to sign the extension in Cleveland. So I think that there's a lot of confidence and optimism there, but until he actually signs and makes it reality, there's that sense of doubt, just a shred of doubt that makes it feel like, especially with Cleveland having experiences before with star players, notably LeBron James.
So if he does sign, we've all heard the reports that Darius Garland's camp would ask for a trade. If Mitchell resigns, what do you think it means for the rest of the roster? Garland and Allen and Mobley.
Yeah. Right now, I can tell you that the Cavs have no intention, are not really interested in moving any of their core four. Now, we've heard the reports that if Donovan Mitchell does sign that extension, Rich Paul and Darius Garland's camp will request a trade, will seek a trade, because they're not sure, they don't really like the fit of Garland next to Mitchell. Now, I can tell you that those players get along wonderfully. They have a great personal relationship. So it's not about that. It's just about their fit. And I think beforehand, even though the Cavs now are kind of, putting word out, we don't really want to move any of our core four, which would be Garland, Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley. I think that they would be most open to moving Garland if, number one, his camp requests a trade, and number two, I think that maybe there was, with Garland's struggles this past season and not really fitting, especially after the All-Star break, after he came back from his injury, his broken jaw. I think that the Cavs were probably thinking a little bit, maybe Mitchell and Garland don't work. We've given it 2 years. Maybe it's time to move on. And certainly they're not going to move on from Donovan Mitchell. So, the guy to be moved on from would be Darius Garland.
The other thing is, the Cavs aren't going to come out and say that they're going to move on from one of their core four, because you've immediately devalued. If you were going to trade Darius Garland, and you said, you devalue his trade value if you come out and say you're going to do that. So you absolutely, we think he's an all-star. He just had a little bit of a down. Even if you're going to trade him, you're building him up.
Yeah, and we saw that, Dave. You're exactly right. Back in a decade ago, when the Cavs insisted they weren't going to trade number 1 overall draft pick Andrew Wiggins, they kept going on and on and on over the summer at Summer League that they weren't going to do it. They kept building him up. We think he's got a bright future next to LeBron James. And then, August before the season, Andrew Wiggins gets shipped off, and Kevin Love comes to town. That worked out okay. So, yeah, absolutely. They're not going to say, hey, we're looking to trade Darius Garland right now, because, you stand a chance to get a lot more for him in return should you say, we're not motivated to trade any of these guys right now. And I'm sure that's the way they're approaching it. So I think that there is a sense that they could make a move with Garland. But again, you can't do anything until you find out what Donovan Mitchell's doing.
So there's a thought that the Cavs need Evan Mobley to develop into a three-point shooter, so you don't clog up the middle and all that. Am I delusional? And you know me well enough that you can feel free to tell me I'm delusional. To me, he's a guy that's athletic. He's a big guy that can move. He's agile. We've seen him play defense. You should be able to find a way to get him in motion, moving around, catching the ball, and shooting offensively that makes him a threat that isn't, hey, go shoot threes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I don't think the Cavs are wanting him to become, Kevin Love or any of that. They want him to be able to knock down the occasional three, which I think he did this past season. Just got to improve on that a little bit more. But he's not a guy who's going to be taking 7 to 10 3-pointers a game. If so, you've kind of messed it up with him because, his best, I guess his best play has come when he's been not only a guy who's scoring underneath, but 12 to 15 foot range. He's always been, what the Cavs want to bring out of him is he's such a good ball handler and passer. And we saw that the first probably 40 games of his rookie year, but he's not developed anymore in that area. You could tell that just by the simple eye test. He's not bad at those things. He's just not gotten better. And, that's where the Cavs want this new coach to come in and develop Mobley, get him to another level, and get him playing with more confidence offensively. There are times in games where he's just not been very fluid, and they want that to change. They want him to become, a Chris Bosh type, or people have talked about Kevin Garnett. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but, a kind of a Chris Bosh type where you are fluid and confident and every night you're a threat to score 20, 25 points. Defensively, he's already there. Evan Mobley is among the elite defenders in the NBA. But offensively, the Cavs would like him to take another step. And no, it doesn't, Dave, you're right. It doesn't involve him taking a bunch of 3-pointers. It involves him occasionally being able to knock them down. I think they would rather see him in that 12 to 15 foot range if he needs to step out. And other than that, get in close to the basket and do your work down there.
Things that jump out about him, still really young. I think he's, 21? So
yeah,
he is a mismatch, too, if you think about it. He's 6'11", whatever he is. A big guy is probably too slow to defend him. A little guy shouldn't be strong enough to defend him. And when you get in that 12 to 15 foot range, it's like, how do you want me to beat you? That should be the decision that Evan Mobley puts defenders in. Do you want me to beat you with a jump shot? Are you going to come out and try to defend me? I'm going to beat you because I'm a step quicker than you.
Yeah, and that's just it. He has that upside. And I think that that's a big reason, that the Cavs are having a coaching search today, is they want somebody to draw that out of him, whether it be, just playing with much more confidence, much more fluidity, especially, playing off the other guys. I think there were times the Cavs thought he just didn't get the ball enough. Mm-hmm. The front office thought that. So they want all those things to change, and it's not going to be the only thing that determines their new coach, but Evan Mobley and his rise is something that I'm sure is being brought up a lot in these coaching interviews. The Cavs want him to take the next step in year 4, and they're hoping to get a coach who can bring that out.
So here's a question. So we've kind of talked about, Mitchell and Garland might not match. What about Allen and Mobley? Do you think those two can coexist? And those are both really athletic guys.
Yeah, I think they can coexist because Jared Allen, even though he's, set the franchise record for consecutive double-doubles this past season, isn't a guy who needs the basketball to make an impact. You'll never see Jared Allen down on the low block demanding the ball. That's just not his game. His game is more rolling to the basket, getting lobs and stuff like that, cleaning up other people's mess on the offensive glass, those type of things, running the floor. So I think that they work just fine together. I'm surprised to hear people think that they don't, like they're both down there clogging it up. I don't think that's the case at all. Now, granted, Jared Allen, anything outside of 5 to 10 feet is an adventure when it comes to his shot, but that's okay. He's your center, and he offers what he offers. And, one thing people seem to forget, too, is for years and years and years, people talked about how the Cavs needed more protectors at the rim, more shot blockers, more shot alters. Now they have 2 of the best in the NBA playing side by side, and that's a huge when you talk about, playing playoff style defense and just, creating all kinds of havoc for the other team defensively. So I think that that's why the Cavs think, yeah, absolutely they fit together. and we'll work it out offensively. It's okay offensively. We think it can get better offensively. Defensively, they've already arrived. So I just don't think that when you have that type of front court and dominance under the basket defensively, I don't think you give that up for, a small forwards, say.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com, and I can step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the Cavs coaching search, who the guys they're looking at, what they might be looking for. Sports for CLE. We'll continue talking Cavs. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Cavs on Sports4CLE. These are some of the names that we have heard the Cavs have either interviewed or requested permission to interview. Terry Stotts, former NFL or NBA head coach, long shot for this one. David Adelman, Kenny Atkinson, who has some head coaching experience. Chris Quinn, James Borrego, some head coaching experience. Then there's Johnny Bryant, Mike Honore, Dave Jorger, Alex Jensen, Steve Hetzel. They will not interview Frank Vogel, who was just fired as the coach of the Suns. Before that, he was Lakers head coach. Sam, when you look at that list, not a lot of guys jump out. Why do you think the Cavs are casting such a wide net in their coaching search?
Well, probably for the reasons we mentioned. They want to see who says the right things about developing Evan Mobley, getting creative offensively, assuming, Donovan Mitchell is back. They want somebody to be able to take them to another level, and look, they've made the natural steps under JB Bickerstaff, even though it wasn't always pretty. They went to the play-in tournament, then they went to the first round, then they went to the second round. And I don't think anybody thought, even if they had Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen healthy and Karis LeVert, who wasn't healthy, for part of the playoffs, I don't think anybody thought that they were going to beat the Boston Celtics, who were 64-18. So, I think that, those are the things that worked in JB Bickerstaff's favor. What didn't work in his favor was the fact that they probably, a lot of people were expecting them to make much easier work of the Orlando Magic in the first round and not have to win that series in 7 games and come back from 18 down in game 7 at home to make that happen against a young, inexperienced playoff team. The Cavs didn't play in that first round like the team that had been there before. So I think that was part of the reason, and that's why they're casting such a wide net, is because they want to make sure that they have the right guy who they feel very comfortable. When you make that hire, you want to be able to say, yep, this is our guy. You don't want to be able to say, well, sure wish we would have interviewed 3 or 4 more. This is the off season. You have the time to do that. This is your entire off season, other than, you've got your scouting department handling the draft and reporting to Kobe Altman on that. But, and the Donovan Mitchell thing's going to be up to Donovan Mitchell. So the whole off season right now for Kobe Altman is pretty much, we got to find the right guy to get us to the next level when it comes to, we made it to the Eastern Conference semifinals this past season. How do we get a guy, who's the guy who's going to take us to Eastern Conference Finals or maybe beyond? And that's why, you're conducting such an exhaustive search, just because, if you're Kobe Altman, this is probably your most important hire.
Yeah, how important is this offseason? That's the logical question. You got Mitchell. There might be a major tweak or shift in the roster, and you got to find the head coach. I mean, you got to get pretty much all of those right.
Yeah, and that's it's funny because nationally we're not hearing much about the Cavs offseason, but locally I think people are understanding that this is pretty huge, because you've got 3 big things working right now. Number one, obviously is a Donovan Mitchell thing. I think that's even bigger than the coaching hire, because you can hire a great coach. If Donovan Mitchell leaves, well, then you're starting from scratch again. So I think number one is Donovan Mitchell. Number two, obviously the coach, presuming that Donovan Mitchell does resign, as everybody is optimistic and confident that he will do, or sign that extension, then, you got to find a coach who's going to bring out the best. Mitchell, you don't have to worry about, but going to bring out the best in Mobley, Allen, and the guys around them, the Karis LeVerts and Isaac Okoros and some of those other guys, George Yang, that you want to contribute even more next season. So that's the number two thing. The number three thing is obviously, Isaac Okoro is a restricted free agent. I would say that all these things are tied. Isaac Okoro is a restricted free agent. Evan Mobley can sign a longer deal. And then, of course, you may have to deal with the Darius Garland trade, which all of a sudden, after you make a coaching hire and sign Donovan Mitchell, this becomes your number one priority, could potentially be trading Darius Garland. So, it could be as crazy an offseason as you think. Now, the other thing I've heard, and one thing we have to remember when it comes to trade, Dave, is you have until February to make one of those. So I don't know that they'll be real desperate to make a trade before the season, unless it does involve Darius Garland, because you don't want to go into the season with a guy who doesn't want to be there.
So we've heard the names of the coaching candidates. Does ties to Donovan Mitchell, is that important? Is Donovan Mitchell, is the coach being a Donovan Mitchell guy important? And the other thing is, are there any names that kind of intrigue you that you think check a lot of the boxes?
Yeah, first of all, to answer your first question with Donovan Mitchell, you don't want to hire somebody he doesn't like. I think that's the big thing. You want to hire somebody that he believes in and has a pretty good sense. And I'll say this about Donovan Mitchell. When the Utah Jazz gutted that roster, and Quinn Snyder, who is Donovan Mitchell's favorite, and in fact, if Quinn Snyder were available, now the coach of the Hawks, but if he were available, he'd already be the Cavs coach. That's how much Donovan Mitchell likes him. But, unfortunately, for that situation, Quinn Snyder is not going anywhere with the Hawks. So I think that there is a significance in that, Donovan Mitchell will stay. When the Jazz gutted that team, and they hired Will Hardy, Donovan Mitchell came out and said, "Look, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm under contract here, and I'm going to play as hard as I always do." So I think that the Cavs have that working in their favor. Will Hardy, who was the Jazz coach, got hired as a Jazz coach to replace Quinn Snyder, was an unknown. And Donovan Mitchell was saying, "Yeah, I'm here. This is my team." So then the Jazz, of course, traded him to Cleveland. But I think that works in the Cavs' favor when hiring a coach. They know Donovan Mitchell's personality. They know he's not super picky. And I think it's just a matter of, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to play for this guy, we're not going to interview him. That's what it comes down to. But everybody else, I think that he would be open to playing for, at least the names we see on the list. And I think that they're going to factor that in.
Any of those guys intrigue you, the list that we went through?
Yeah, the front runners, Kenny Atkinson and James Borrego, if those are the names we're hearing as the front runners, I think that those guys are intriguing simply because Kenny Atkinson obviously had coaching experience with the Nets. I thought he did a decent job in kind of a losing situation. I know Jared Allen and Karis LeVert played for him in Brooklyn and really like him. When I posted that on my Facebook page, Karis LeVert and Jared Allen really like Kenny Atkinson, and all the comments to a T pretty much read, "Yeah, we don't care. Who does Donovan Mitchell like?" So I think that that's something. But I think, Kenny Atkinson, having been under Steve Kerr for a few years, that works in his favor too. I find him to be an intriguing guy, just because he's been around the NBA for so long. James Borrego, to me, was an excellent coach in Charlotte. The team won 10 more games in each of his final 3 seasons. So I think they went from 23 to 33 to 43 in his final 3 seasons. So, obviously, and now he's coaching under Willie Green with David Griffin's New Orleans Pelicans. So I think both of those guys have a lot of experience, a lot of know-how. Borrego comes from the San Antonio Spurs coaching tree. So, I don't think you could go wrong with either one of those guys. But I think they're just the early front runners. I don't think that they're like clear-cut favorites. I think we're going to see a lot more names mentioned, a lot more names factored in. And I'll say this. I think that the Cavs really want to have a coach in place before the draft, which is June 26th. And I've posted this on HoopsWire multiple times. They really, really want a coach in place before that whole Donovan Mitchell extension thing happens, presumably in early July.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the Cavs roster moving forward. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Cavs on Sports for CLE with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. All right, Sam, we're going to make assumptions, and you know what you say when you assume. So sometimes we could be wrong, but assuming there will be changes to the Cavs roster. Some names that we've heard in trade as trade candidates for the Cavs. Brandon Ingram from New Orleans. Does he make sense? Do you think he fits with what they would want?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly would. He's if he can stay on the floor, which has been a question most of his career, a lot of injuries, but borderline all-star, really the Pelicans' second best player when he's healthy after Zion Williamson, which says a lot because CJ McCollum's on that team too and plays incredibly well for them. So I think he would. That would be somebody that would be, if Darius Garland were to be moved, that would be who the Cavs would, one of the players they would certainly target. And I've heard New Orleans would certainly have interest in Darius Garland. And guess what? The salaries match, so it would be a very easy trade to make. But, Ingram he's a small forward. He's unselfish, great athlete, and great attitude. So he gets along well with his teammates, which I know is very important to the Cavs because their culture is a big part of everything they're trying to do. So I would think that, yeah, Brandon Ingram, certainly there's reasons that his name has been linked to the Cavs repeatedly, especially if Darius Garland does, in fact, request a trade after presuming Donovan Mitchell signs that extension.
Another one that we've heard is Keldon Johnson from the Spurs. Is that another guy that a little bit younger, and there have been flashes with him?
Yeah, he's, flies under the radar because the Spurs have been so bad and everything with San Antonio has been Victor Wembanyama. But no, Keldon Johnson, a very nice player, shooting guard, small forward type, really good athlete, can get to the basket, scores a lot of his points by, off the break and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, real nice player, very, very underrated in my opinion. And I know San Antonio would be one of the teams that would have an interest in Garland to pair him with Wembanyama and old friend Cedi Osman, assuming he resigns there. But Garland is somebody that you would float for talks like that, and you could do a lot worse than Keldon Johnson or especially Brandon Ingram.
So, assuming, and again, we're playing hypothetical, and there's a danger in that, but we're going to do it anyway. We're on TV. We can do whatever we want. Assuming that it is Darius Garland, what type is it? Strictly like a Darius Garland for Brandon Ingram, or would there be more Darius Garland for Keldon Johnson? Would there be more?
Yeah, I think that Garland and Ingram would probably be a straight up type deal, be just one-on-one. Now, maybe you would throw in some draft capital or something like that would be fairly meaningless. But, Garland if you just want to do Garland for Ingram and nothing else, you could do that because the salaries match. Keldon Johnson, I think the Cavs would want a little bit more back than just Keldon Johnson for Garland. It wouldn't be a lot, but it would be probably something else. I've heard talk of Garland, the Wizards really like him. I don't know if Rich Paul would allow that to happen, but There's a possibility there, with like Trey Jones, who's their point guard, and a Corey Kispert, who's an outside shooting small forward. That deal works, So I think that there are a number of possibilities. And if Garland is traded, I think that, maybe come out of nowhere. Some team may come out of nowhere. It may end up being a 3-team deal. But if you're talking just Ingram and Johnson, those would be very easy trades to make almost straight up.
All right, so we've both said we don't necessarily know how likely it is Jared Allen gets traded. What would Allen bring back if they trade him?
Yeah, Allen would be a bigger deal because, again, you're giving up one of your pieces that's a center that's really one of the top defenders in the league in terms of defending at the rim, and he even does a nice job when he gets switched out on the guard. So, it's hard to tell. I don't know that the Cavs would want to trade Jared Allen for a small forward in Brandon Ingram. As Ingram's a superior player, but at least offensively, I just think that you're, all of a sudden then now you have another hole to fill if you're the Cavs, and you should make that trade. Now who's going to be your second primary interior defender next to Evan Mobley? You got to go out and fill that hole. So I think that the Cavs would want somebody back who's, probably a big man, and I just don't know where you'd go with that. I know that we've heard rumors of Allen being traded. I would be shocked if the Cavs actually made that move because you're not going to probably get back equal return as well as such an unselfish guy who fits so well.
So let's take now we'll take it to the extreme. Assuming that it's Donovan Mitchell who goes, what kind of trade does that, and again, it would be Donovan Mitchell kind of facilitating this. If the Cavs are their hands forced, and you have to trade Donovan Mitchell, what do you try to get back?
Yeah, you hate to even think that, but it could just, it's a real possibility. I wouldn't say a real possibility, but the possibility exists that you would have to deal him if he doesn't sign that contract extension. Look, you're going to go straight probably to the Miami Heat. We've heard rumors that maybe that's a team he would be interested in if he leaves the Cavs, and you could get back quite a haul. You would think you could get presumably like a Tyler Hero, maybe a Caleb Martin, and you're going to want some dynamic type players back in exchange for Mitchell. You'd probably get a lot of picks in that deal. You'd have to get some of your picks back because you gave up so many to Utah to get Mitchell to Cleveland. So, I think that would be a huge thing to look at would be Miami, Brooklyn, potentially, where Mitchell is from. I don't think the Nets would want to move Mikal Bridges, but they could. If that's what the Cavs are demanding. And here's the thing: if Mitchell doesn't sign that extension and makes it clear that he wants traded, the Cavs are going to get a really good offer because, even though other teams know they have to trade Mitchell, he could go anywhere. So I think that's the thing that the Cavs would have working in their favor is we can ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars and presumably get that in return because there'd be so many teams, opposing teams trying to outbid each other. And I just think the Cavs don't want to go down that road, but if they do, if they have to, I think that they'll be set up for a little while if they do. They prefer Mitchell and not have to explore all that, but I'm sure that they're keeping their options open until he signs that extension.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Mitchell trading Donovan Mitchell kind of the last resort if they can't get him to agree to stay here long term. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right, Dave. Thanks so much for having me. We'll chat with you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Make sure to check him out. Great coverage, not only of the Cavs, but the entire NBA. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.